These are real stories about real people. You'll find yourselves in these stories. Welcome back to the NIV Application Bible Podcast. Thank you for hanging out with us. We have loved just kind of perusing the promises of God with you. We couldn't do it without you, so thank you for carving out the time to hang with us. We are in the book of Joshua, and I'll dive right into this story because I'm going to read a pretty long passage, but y'all, there's such promise and such relevance in this passage. This is Joshua chapter 4. When the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "Choose 12 men from among the people, one from each tribe, and tell them to take up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, from right where the priests are standing, and carry them over with you, and put them down at the place where you stay tonight." So Joshua called together the 12 men he had appointed from the Israelites, one from each tribe, and said to them, "Go over before the ark of the Lord your God into the middle of the Jordan. Each of you is to take up a stone on his shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of the Israelites, to serve as a sign among you in the future. When your children ask you, 'What do these stones mean?' tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. These stones are to be a memorial to the people of Israel forever." So the Israelites did as Joshua commanded them. They took 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, according to the number of the tribes of the Israelites, as the Lord had told Joshua, and they carried them over with them to their camp, where they put them down. Joshua set up the 12 stones that had been in the middle of the Jordan at the spot where the priest who carried the Ark of the Covenant had stood, and they are there to this day. The very end of Joshua chapter 4 reads like this. And Joshua set up at Gilgal the 12 stones they had taken out of the Jordan. He said to the Israelites, "In the future, when your descendants ask their parents, 'What do these stones mean?' tell them, 'Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the Jordan before you until you had crossed over. The Lord your God did to the Jordan what he had done to the Red Sea when he dried it up before us until we had crossed over. He did this so that all the peoples of the earth might know that the hand of the Lord is powerful, and so you might always fear the Lord your God." I love this story. It's such a practical story. If I ever have the privilege of meeting you face to face and we get to hang out together and you come to my home, you'll find that I have rocks in my room. Not because I have rocks in my head necessarily, but because I love this story. I love this idea of a memorial. You know, God's people, when he called them out of captivity in Egypt, the first barrier they had was the Red Sea. Remember, in the Red Sea, at that encounter, he said, "You don't have to do anything. Basically, just sit back and watch, and I'll dry up the Red Sea." And they were able to cross through and not drown, and then he drowned those horrible Egyptian soldiers who were pursuing them, trying to murder them. And then they spent those 40 or so years in the wilderness, experiencing God's presence through the cloud by day, pillar of fire by night, those theophanies, fancy word that just means physical manifestation of God. They experienced his provision through manna. They were able to eat because of God's kindness, his mercy. So they spent 40 years in the relational covenant with God in the wilderness, and then they get to the cusp of the promised land, and there's another watery barrier. It's the Jordan. I've actually been to that exact spot multiple times. That's where I got to baptize my daughter. That's where Jesus got baptized by John the Baptist. That's where Elijah went up. That's where the Israelites crossed over. But it was flood stage when they got there, and they were afraid. And God tells Joshua, "I'm going to part this water for my people too. However, this time, I want you to get your feet wet. I don't want you to just observe the miracle. I want you to participate in the miracle." He said, "I want you to have the priest put their feet in the Jordan at flood stage." And when they trusted God enough to take a step, boy, doesn't that preach to us today. When they trusted God enough to take a step into that water, he parted the Jordan. And God said, I want you to take rocks from the middle of the Jordan. I want you to set up a memorial on the other side so that in the future, when your children and your children's children, your descendants see this Ebenezer, this pile of rocks, you can tell them the story. We're all in one of three places in our lives. We're either on this side of what looks like a furious river thinking, how in the world am I going to get to the other side? Or we're in the middle of a difficult season going, wow, I thought this would drown me, but God is holding me. My feet are on high ground. Or we're on the other side of what seemed to be an impossible, impassable barrier, looking back going, I can't believe God did that for my family. I can't believe he did it for me. And so I've been collecting rocks for years, and I write things on those rocks. I've had some dear friends in addiction, and there were times when I walked with them that I thought, we are up to our necks. But because of the faithfulness and the power of God, I'm going to trust that we're not going to drown. He repeats that promise in Isaiah. You don't have to be afraid because the water may get up high, but it's not going to drown you. I have rocks that I've written on when I've stood on the other side of a figurative flooding river, and I thought, I can't believe God dried that up and allowed us to part. My daughter wasn't supposed to live. She's 15 years old and healthy as a horse. You better believe I've got my daughter's name on a rock that proves the constant faithfulness and the power of our Creator, Redeemer. Don't for a moment think this is a boring museum piece. These are real stories about real people. You'll find yourselves in these stories. Here's the application point for the story we just walked through. Joshua erected 12 stones at Gilgal so that future Israelite generations would remember what had happened there. It would drive them back to a firm, steady, convinced, life-altering fear of God. Like Joshua, Jesus took pains to ensure that his followers remember his death. At the Last Supper, he declared, "Do this in remembrance of me." Do you remember? Do you remember what he's already done in your life? The Red Seas and the flooded Jordans that he's already parted. Are you facing one right now? I would encourage you, if you are, go out in the yard, go somewhere that you can find a rock, get a magic marker, just write what you're facing on that rock. I set mine usually on the kitchen windowsill, in my bedroom, on my counter. You'll find all these rocks. And I write the things that I believe that God is going to do on those rocks, and he does them. And I keep those rocks. And when I brought my daughter home from Haiti, she said, "Mama, why do you have my name on a rock?" And I said, let me tell you the story. This isn't a rule book. It's not a textbook. It's not a collection of morality tales like Aesop's fables. These are true stories about a real God who really, really loves us. Lean into it. I promise it'll change your life.